Some months ago, I uploaded a video about how to properly price your record collection where I kind of just talk about my methods of how I look up my records, kind of pointing out that there are different versions of different records and how to identify that, and where to go to look it up, and kind of get a ballpark idea of what your collection's worth if that's something you're concerned with. So quickly after that upload, it was identified and brought to my attention that there was a key piece of information that I should have included in that video, and that is to address the confusion that can come out of looking up items on everyone's favorite online cataloging source, Discogs. So what I will attempt to do here today is to close the loop on that subject and hopefully clear up some of the confusion as to how things are priced in Discogs. So if you're new here, welcome in, and if you're a repeat offender, welcome back. I'm Johnny, and this is Channel 910. Fully understanding that what I'm about to talk about can become a very in-depth subject. So I'm going to try to kind of stick to the highlights, what I like to call the wave tops, and just kind of hit on the basics that you need in order to properly navigate the pricing feature in Discogs. So why exactly does this matter? For some people, they collect simply for the love of the music, and they don't care what their collection is worth because it is priceless to them. And that is completely understandable, respectable, and a fine answer. This video is not for those individuals. This video is directed towards those who buy and sell records. As a buyer, proper research ensures that you're not paying too much for the item, and as a seller, proper research on your part ensures that you're not underpricing your precious inventory. So some of you may be saying, this is not that hard. You just go on Discogs and you look at the median price and that's what your item is worth. But that is exactly where I want to address the biggest issue with Discogs and how people look up items, is that damn median price. For the purposes of this discussion regarding Discogs pricing, I chose 3 items out of my personal collection that I knew were kind of weird when you're trying to look them up in Discogs. They kind of give you mixed information. They each have their own unique characteristic within the cataloging system. So we'll look at these 3 relatively quickly, so just bear with me, and you may see some things that you've encountered yourself. The first one I want to look at is an original pressing of Soundgarden Super Unknown from 1994. Specifically with this one, we're looking at the blue vinyl because this is blue vinyl and that was offered in 2 different countries. So we're going to take a quick look at Europe and the US with this classic grunge album. Now, this is the one that I was just showing you. This is the 1994 European pressing on the blue transparent vinyl. So what we see here is a median price of $169.70, and that's in US dollars because I'm looking at this through a US VPN. So what immediately I want to point out here with this median is the aggregate of all of the copies that have ever sold of this album. So you see on the low end, somebody got one for $53.69. Now, we don't know what condition that was. We don't know if it was missing one of the records because this is a 2 LP. We have no idea. Maybe this person just got a really great deal and got it for $54. But that's the low end. Then you have the highest it's ever sold for is $273.26. We don't know the condition on this one. Something to keep in mind with these Discogs, low, median, and highs. If an album has maybe an autographed version, it's going to be on the high end. But then maybe the standard version is only worth about $20 or something. So if you have like a $400 signed copy and a $20 standard copy, then that's going to skew your median to somewhere in the $200 range. But that's not accurate. It doesn't mean that your record is worth $200. In this case, it doesn't necessarily mean your record is worth $170. Now, let's take a look at what's actually available here in the shop. All right, so pulling up everything that is for sale of this particular copy. If I want this pressing and this pressing alone, then this is what I have to work with. I've already sorted this by price, with the lowest being first, and immediately the very first one is not available to me in the United States. So this is something else to keep in mind with Discogs. You might see a price over here and you're like, oh, well, wow, that's the price I'm looking for. But keep in mind conversion rates and shipping on top of that, because we're going to go to the very next one here. We have a VG Plus on the media, so in a VG sleeve, so a decent copy here. 179 euros. That's tracking close number wise to this, but 179 euros, basically 180 euros, you're getting up to about 200 US dollars. Well, you're already over the median. But when you tack on the shipping as well of 33 euros, you're at about 250 US dollars, 247.66. So if I wanted to get this one, what is considered the cheapest one that's available to me, it's going to cost me about $250. Well, that's a far cry from that median, because availability also drives price. So you have to understand, you cannot just look at this median. You have to look at what is actually available to you. And as you go from here, you see we actually go up to almost $270 after shipping. There's $264 after shipping, $270, about $270. Again, $263, $300. So again, you should be catching on to what I'm trying to explain here. This median is not what this album is necessarily worth. So what if you don't necessarily need the Europe? You want the US pressing. Because again, we're looking at this through the eyes of an American because we're in the United States. So let's look over here at Soundgarden Super Unknown US press, 1994. This is also on blue. So we are looking at a very comparable pressing. Your median is now 222. Okay, it's sold for as low as 45, but as high as 350. So of these copies that are available, again, we're sorted lowest to highest. Immediately the lowest one is not even in the United States. It's in Austria. So the shipping, you're looking at 238. Now you're closer to that median. This includes the inserts, price sticker, light ring wear, a bit ripped on the right bottom corner. So if you're big on your condition, you're getting a VG sleeve on this. But you can stay probably close to the median. That's going to have to ship from overseas, so there may be complications with the international part of that, but it's your money, it's your decision. The next one, again, is unavailable in the United States. The next one, again, you're talking, this is in the UK. And that's going to cost you about 285 US dollars after shipping. The first one that's actually in the United States is 265 US dollars. And they're going to stick you with $10 of shipping on top of that too. So you're looking at 275 for this. Now they're claiming it's a near mint with a VG Plus sleeve, but they leave no comments. Again, these are good comments right here. Very detailed. So many comments that you actually have to open up further to see that. Look at all this. This is fantastic. I love it when sellers do this. They even have photos here, so you can actually go and look at photos of the item. This is a great description. This right here, this is garbage. There's no description. If you can't describe your product, I'm probably not going to buy it from you. So you're taking a big chance at $275. They also only have 11 ratings. This means that they have not sold a whole lot on Discogs. They're not yet what I would consider a reputable seller. Like, look at the very next one. 9,805 ratings, which means they've sold quite a bit on here. Now, you're talking about 291. You're paying for that quality. But you kind of get what I'm talking about here. The median does not necessarily mean that's what it's worth or what you can get it for. So understandably, you might be looking at Super Unknown and you're saying, okay, that's not a fair one to use because it's an original 90s pressing. They're very high in demand, so they're going to be expensive and they're doing nothing but going up in price as time goes on. And I would say, yes, you are probably very accurate in that assessment. It's all about supply and demand. And that's a record that is in high demand, and there is just a dwindling supply of them out there. So, yes, I understand. So, let's look at something that's a little bit more modern that is more likely to get represses and higher availability. So, I chose Now That's What I Call Music 20th Anniversary Volume 1. Just, one of your compilations in the United States. I think these were available probably at like Target or Walmart. So not something that's like ultra mega rare, but it's something that we're going to take a look at in Discogs, and I think you might be surprised. So whereas the last record we looked at had a median that was actually lower than what you could get the record for, we're going to see a bit of a difference here. We're going to see a shift in that. So what we're looking at here, this is what I was just showing with the red and blue translucent. Now That's What I Call Music 20th Anniversary Volume 1. So we see over here that there are 23 available to shop from, and we're going to go take a look at that in a second. What I want to point out are, again, the low, median, and high, because this is where a lot of people focus on whenever they go to price their records. This is one that, from a buyer perspective, you really need to research this, because when you see this median of 55, if a seller goes straight to the median and lists it for 55, you're going to see here in a second, you're being done a very severe injustice. Now, the lowest this has ever sold for was 18, probably like an opened copy, something that was played a few times. Maybe it was one that got had a little bit of shelf damage from shipment or something, so it had a crease corner. I'm just guessing, but 18 is low for a 2LP anyway, so somebody got a deal. 130 on the high end. I have to assume that this was FOMO. When this came out, somebody was afraid that it was going to sell out or they weren't going to be able to get it, so they paid 130 for this thing. So because of such a low number here and such a high number here, we end up with 55. I have no idea how many of these have sold, but 55 is where the numbers have brought this to as a median. Now, let's take a look at availability. Okay, again, this is sorted from lowest to highest price. And immediately, the very first one we see is in the United States, and it is $25 US plus your shipping. This is brand new, never opened, never played. It says it does have a couple corner dings and a small crease in the lower left of the jacket, but this is a sealed copy. This is brand new for $25. That is a lot less than 55. We're less than half of 55. But you're saying, okay, it's got that corner ding and a small crease. I don't want that. Okay. Fair enough. Same seller. This is something else to look at. Sometimes people have multiple things. So, this seller here is the same as this seller here. They have a near mint copy, brand new, never opened, never played. Now, the difference here is they said this one has corner dings. They didn't say that down here. They just said never opened, never played. I'm assuming this is a nice copy. They also went from VG Plus on the sleeve to near mint. And for a measly $5 more, you get this thing sealed, brand new, in what's considered near mint condition after shipping, which I will say their shipping is kind of high. $9.50 shipping in the US is pretty high for something that's media. You could ship this thing media mail. They're gouging you for a couple bucks in the shipping. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, we can talk about it in the comments, but yeah, that's too much to pay for media mail. But it still gets you at $15 less than the median, even after that crazy shipping price. It's still less. The very next one down, brand new, still sealed, for $30. After shipping, you're getting closer to normal pricing here at $7. You're at $37. Free shipping. This is brand new, factory sealed from the United States. 244 ratings isn't a ton, but it's not minuscule either. So probably reliable. $30 free shipping. So you're at $30 out the door on a record that is worth $55, but it's not. It's obviously worth $30. So this is what I'm talking about. This is the reverse of the Soundgarden thing. This is taking something that has a median that is way higher than what you can actually get it for. We have to scroll all the way down to right here, and that's coming from Australia, where it starts hitting that median price. And then you're looking at stuff that's overseas for US, or even here. Because what this, again, I'll tell you too, but Discogs, they're basing the price on this price, not the shipping. So you'll see here you have a $45 copy from the US, but it's free shipping. But 45 is more than 37.50 euros. So you kind of see where I'm going there. Discogs doesn't factor in the shipping when it comes to how they rack and stack lowest to highest. And from here, I think you're starting to see people who honestly look more at the median, because you're seeing, check this out, 50, 55, 55, 55. These are all, this is the median price between these three. So they went straight to the median. They're like, that's what I'm going to charge. And then you have people who I always say are just trying to take advantage. You know, you've got 75 here, 100, 123. These are just getting astronomically high for what this is. So, you know, that's how you read the tea leaves with that median price. This is not, this album, this Now What I Call Music, says it's a $55 record. It is not a $55 record. Thus far, we've looked at a couple different situations. One being a pressing from the 1990s that's very hard to get and in high demand, and where the median price in Discogs does not reflect how expensive this record actually is when you're trying to purchase it. But on the other hand, we have a record that's a little bit more of a modern pressing that is not as hard to find, but for some reason the median price in Discogs has it way higher than what you can even buy it for from sellers in the app. But now we'll turn our attention to something that's a little bit more unique. Something that was only pressed in one country, and it was only pressed 2 times. So never had a repress, and it's very hard to get, and it's from a more niche band. So what we're going to look at now is the record Feeler from Toadies. Now, you probably know Toadies from their album Rubberneck. That was their big breakthrough. That was their most popular record. They do have other albums. So if you're looking to try to get your hands on something like this, here's what it looks like in Discogs. Here is Feeler from Toadies. This is the 2010 pressing on black vinyl. There was only one other pressing of this album ever in existence, and it was also from 2010, but it was a picture disc. So if you're looking for this on black vinyl, this is the listing you want to go for. And we see over here that it has a median of about 23 US dollars, that low end of 10 and that high end of 60. So that $23 median, keep that in mind as we look at the only 4 records that are available in Discogs. This tells you here, it is rare to find this record. And here are your 4 copies, and they range from 100 US dollars all the way up to 300 US dollars. You have 3 of them that are actually located in the United States if you're in the US, and there's one located in Spain. Now the one in Spain is going to cost you, after shipping and everything is said and done, about 140. So you've got 109, 110, 140, 208, and then they throw you a bone here with the no extra shipping, so you know, appreciate that, but you're at $300. And it's someone who didn't leave any kind of description, so you're taking a chance on that one. So this album and this band, it's kind of niche, but that goes to show you with the availability of this record, only 4 copies available in Discogs. And I will say, because I did the research, and I implore everyone to do the same, when you're researching a record, go to other places like eBay and see what's out there. These prices are consistent with eBay. They're actually, some of these are better than eBay prices. So the $23 median is extremely deceiving with this particular record because you cannot find it for $23. So you have to keep all of this in mind when you're hunting down these prices. Now, we can look at last sold. This is something that we haven't looked at with the other records, but what this kind of does for you, besides making you sick to your stomach to see that people got these things for such good prices in the past, is it shows you the trend with this record. So starting back in 2016, it sold for about $10 for a near mint copy. It's probably sealed in 2016. All the way up to this particular copy, which was in 2025. So it was in December, actually. So this is just like a month ago. It sold for $60. So these are your fluctuation in prices over time. And what this tells me is between 2016 and 2025, it has been on a steady increase in its pricing. So yes, you can see that it took a spike. If you'd grabbed onto this back around 2024, you could have got it pretty cheap, because as of 2024, the most expensive copy that ever sold was only $30, but it has now pretty much doubled in price. And the fact that there are so few available on Discogs has driven, between the supply and demand, it has driven the price up to $100 for a copy of this record. So now, what exactly does that mean overall with this particular record? It means that as a buyer, you cannot just go right into Discogs and see that $23 median and expect a vendor to sell it to you for $23, because that's not the market value of that record at the time. Now, those who are selling it for $100 may be trying to take advantage of a situation where there's not a lot of supply out there. So they're jacking the price up because the last one that sold was $60. And if you can hold out long enough, you might get it for $60, but I don't think you're ever going to see it for $23. Now, as a seller, you also have to understand, if you go in there and you look straight at that median of $23 and you sell it for $23, you have shortchanged yourself. The thing to keep in mind from both the buyer and seller perspective is this: something is only worth what someone is willing to pay for it. So what does that mean for both sides? So sellers, come here. Let me talk to you real quick. So understood that inventory costs money. However it is you procure it, whether it's through some kind of distributor, whether you go to record shows and pick through the crates yourself, whether you're just buying old collections from people and then reselling it, it costs money. So there's overhead in that aspect. Also understood that there are additional overhead costs that have to be calculated in. If you sell online, whether it's Discogs or eBay or whatnot, you're going to pay some type of commission and fees for everything that you sell. If you sell out of a brick and mortar, you're having to pay rent or possibly employees, city taxes, utilities. All of this stuff factors in. So understood that a $5 record that you bought does not necessarily equate to a record that costs you $5, because there's all this overhead that's involved, and you still need to make some profit so that you can go buy more product to continue the cycle. So, as a seller, I can't take this record and price it at the $55 Discogs median, because honestly, it's not worth $55 because you can get it for $25. So you have to be smart about researching whether or not you've got the thing priced too high. Because it's going to sit on your shelf for a long time and no one's ever going to purchase it. But likewise, as a buyer, I can't walk into a shop or an online store and see this record being sold for between $60 and $100 and say it's not worth that. It's only worth $23 because that's what Discogs says the median price is, because that's not accurate either. No more than I, as someone who lives in the United States, can go try to find this European pressing on blue vinyl and expect to pay the $160, $170 median price that's on Discogs, when in all actuality, you can't find this for any less than probably about $250 US. So we have to understand, as both sellers and buyers, that the median price in Discogs is oftentimes a whole lot of bullshit. Always do your research. Do not take median price on Discogs at face value, because more often than not, it is completely wrong and does not apply to what it is you're looking for. And by all means, don't just use Discogs as your only source of research. I mentioned earlier places like eBay and whatnot. Go to those places too. See what stuff is selling for, what it has sold for. But in a lot of cases too, when you say, yeah, but the last time this sold, it only sold for $40. Well, that person got a deal and that copy's gone. So now you're stuck with this one. So it's either pay my price or you get nothing at all. That situation happens sometimes too. So you just have to be ready for whatever the situation is and know what it is you're willing to spend on something going in. If you know that you're not going to spend more than $30 on a particular album and the cheapest one you can find is $50, then you either up your 30 or you just don't buy that record. It's just that easy. We don't have to have these things. They're not oxygen, they're not water, they're not food. We can live without these. So play it smart. Just do what makes sense. If you don't need something right now, then don't get it right now. It might go down in price over time. It could go up, and that's part of the gamble that you take with this hobby. But that's kind of why we love it too, because it's a little bit unpredictable, but that makes it fun. So hopefully this kind of goes to show you that Discogs and the median pricing that you see there is not always what it appears to be, and that ultimately you need to kind of dig below the surface a little bit to get a better idea of what you should be paying for something or what you should be selling something for. And don't get me wrong, sometimes the median is accurate to the release. It just depends on the release. So the bottom line is just do the research and see maybe what you're looking at. The median says 30 and that's really what you can get it for is about $30. But sometimes, you'll be surprised at, when you think you should be paying a certain dollar amount for something and it's higher than that. Do the research and you'll probably understand why it's priced the way it is. And by all means, if you're looking something up, 100% make sure you're looking up the correct version, because that will have a big impact on what something is priced at. For instance, what we looked at earlier with this 1994 pressing of Super Unknown, you can get represses of this and pay about $30 for it. That's a far cry from what an original will cost you. So if you just look up the album on Discogs and you just go to the first one you see, that pricing is going to be different because it's probably a different pressing than what you're actually looking at. So definitely make sure that you're looking at the right thing. Hopefully after editing, this one isn't too long. I was trying to keep it kind of short. I know I probably, went well past what I wanted to, but I'm hoping that this at least gave some insight into the confusion that can be created from looking at the median pricing in Discogs. It's a good system, but it is a flawed system, and it can be very confusing to someone who doesn't go in and do the in-depth research. So keep all of that in mind, and if you have any questions about looking stuff up in Discogs and medians and high prices and low prices and different country variants, drop that stuff down there in the comments. I'm happy to answer whatever questions I might be able to answer, but that's also the beauty of the vinyl community, is if you drop a question down there and you stump me, there's guaranteed to be someone out there who's encountered it or knows the answer to the question. So everyone just come together and we'll answer each other's questions. So if compelled to do so, like, subscribe, share, and comment down below. Now, I enjoy making these videos, and I appreciate that you take the time to watch them. But that's all I've got for this installment. So as always, be cool, love each other, and if you're spinning, you're winning.